Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We are on ayah number 236 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Let us continue بحول الله وقوته. قال الله تعالى: لا جناح عليكم إن طلقتم النساء ما لم تمسوهن أو تفرضوا لهن فريضة ومتعوهن على الموسع قدره وعلى المقتر قدره متاعا بالمعروف حقا على المحسنين. So again we see the words لا جناح عليكم. We have spoken about this before. If you divorce women, meaning your wives, ما لم تمسوهن, as long as you have not touched them. Again, this is a kinaya. It has got nothing to do with touching per se, but what is intended is the sexual intercourse, because having sexual intercourse with your wife necessitates touching. So the intercourse itself, we say this is the malzoom, and the touching is the lazim, meaning that which necessitates. So what Allah is doing is that He's using the lazim to refer to the malzoom. And this is what a kinaya is, referring to something using a word not normally used for that something. أو تفرضوا لهن فريضة. Now, normally the word أو means or, this or that. However, in this context, it does not mean or, it means and. And you have not تفرضوا لهن فريضة, from farada, which means here to appoint, and farida means a share. So fara'id means shares, as in shares of inheritance normally in the books of fiqh. So the share referred to here is the mahar, the bridal gift. So the ayah would be understood as there is no sin upon you if you were to divorce your wives whilst you have not had intercourse with them and have not appointed a mahar for them. So in a case like this, what should be done? He goes on to say, وَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ, from mata', meaning a provision. So give them some provision, meaning give them a gift. So what should be this gift? He says, عَلَى الْمُوسِعِ, which means the one who has plenty of wealth, from wasi', meaning expansive, قَدَرُهُ, his amount, meaning an amount which is in accordance with his means. وَعَلَى الْمُقْتِرِ, this means the poor person, in accordance with his means, meaning his amount. بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, on reasonable terms. Again, we see this word بِالْمَعْرُوفِ much in the Quran, because often the Quran does not give us precise figures. Rather, it gives us a description instead, because giving figures is problematic, because reasonable amounts can differ from time to time and place to place. So the Quran just leaves it down to the customs, because the customs decide what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. He says, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُحْسِنِينَ, a right against those who do good, implying to us that it is an obligation. Okay, what can we pick up from this ayah? Well, firstly, we can pick up that a man may divorce his wife before consummating the marriage. We also pick up that Allah Jalla wa Ala uses kinaya in the Quran, and He would use the kinaya in this case because sexual intercourse is something which most people are shy to speak about explicitly. And so, respecting that aspect of the human nature, Allah Jalla wa Ala uses a kinaya. We may take from this ayah clearly that you can enter into a marriage contract without having specified a bridal gift for the wife. Now, of course, that does not mean that the bridal gift, the mahar, is not wajib. It is wajib, and it remains in your financial liability. But what is not wajib is for you to specify the actual mahar itself. If you have not specified the mahar, then what we say is that the wife receives the maharul mithl, a mahar which a woman of her status would normally receive in accordance with what is reasonable in the customs. We take the obligation of a mut'ah, or a gift, given to the divorced women if a mahar has not been stipulated. And this gift for divorced women needs to be in accordance with the husband's means, depending on how rich he is. So it depends on the husband, it does not depend on the wife's status. Now, what is apparent from the ayah is that if the husband comes into privacy with his wife but does not have sexual intercourse with her, then this ruling applies to him. However, many of the Sahaba said that if he enters into privacy with her even, then the full mahar is due, not just some sort of gift. Now we cannot take that from this ayah, but this is the ruling of the Sahaba. However, it should be noted that we have read a narration from Abdullah ibn Abbas who said that if he comes into privacy with her but does not consummate the marriage, then the full mahar is not due. So it appears that there is no consensus on this matter, and therefore would be a matter of ijtihad. We may also take a general point about how the Quran emphasizes reasonable rules, because we often come across the word bil ma'ruf, and all good laws, even man-made laws, use the word reasonable in their law books. You often hear the police using the word reasonable. In courts of law, you prove a case beyond reasonable doubt. So the word reasonable is a vital word in the context of law. Ayah number 237. وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُوهُنَّ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ وَقَدْ فَرَضْتُمْ لَهُنَّ فَرِيضَةً فَنِصْفُ مَا فَرَضْتُمْ إِلَّا أَن يَعْفُونَ أَوْ يَعْفُوَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ عُقْدَةُ النِّكَاحِ وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. He says, if you divorce them before you have touched them, so again another kinaya referring to sexual intercourse, and you have stipulated for them a faridah, meaning a share or a portion, referring to the mahar, then in this case he says فَنِصْفُ مَا فَرَضْتُمْ, then half of what you have stipulated. It means that you give them half of the mahar you have stipulated. So if you stipulated £1,000 as the mahar, you give them £500. Why is this? Because you have not consummated the marriage, so the full mahar is not due. The full mahar is due when you have consummated the marriage. Then he says إِلَّا أَن يَعْفُونَ. This noon is the noon and niswa, which denotes the plural feminine. So it means except if they agree to remit the mahar. So that is to say, the wives will say, no, you keep the half of the mahar as a show of generosity. Then he says, أَوْ يَعْفُوَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ عُقْدَةُ النِّكَاحِ, or the one in whose hands is the marriage tie agrees to remit. Now, according to the weightier opinion, this refers to the husband. And it makes more sense to say that than to say that the one in whose hand is the contract of marriage is the wali of the woman. Why is this? Because of symmetry. You see, we are then able to say that either the wife lets go of her right of half the mahar, or the husband lets go of his right of half the mahar. So in other words, the divorced wife can say, no, you keep the half of the mahar which is owed to me, as a show of generosity. So in this case, the husband takes back his full mahar. On the other hand, the husband can say, no, you take the half of the mahar which is due to you and the other half as well, as a show of generosity. So in this case, the wife takes away the full mahar. So you see, upon this tafsir, we have this type of symmetry. He says, وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, and that you should remit is closer to taqwa. So in other words, be generous to each other. The wife should say, no, you keep the half of the mahar. And the husband, it is better for him to say, no, you keep the half and the other half as well, take the full mahar. Because showing generosity is closer to taqwa than demanding your rights in full. Even though demanding your rights in full is not haram. He says, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, do not forget the fadl, the grace between you. Okay, what is the fadl referring to here? And like we said before, this is the hardest part of understanding the Quran. We know what the words mean, but we do not know what they refer to. Mujahid, the famous Mufassir, says that this fadl refers to precisely what has preceded, meaning the wife foregoing her right and giving her half of the mahar back to the husband, and the other way around, the husband foregoing his right and giving the full mahar to the wife. This is the grace. Inna Allaha bima ta'maluna basir. That's clear. Okay, what can we pick up from this? In the previous ayah, the husband divorces his wife and he has not stipulated a mahar. The ayah teaches us that he has to give a reasonable gift to the wife. And this will be a parting gift. So even when you part ways, it needs to be on good, professional and cordial terms. And this ayah teaches us that if he has stipulated a mahar, then it is not a gift which he gives, rather it is half of the stipulated mahar. And notice that in both of these ayat, the divorce happens before the consummation of marriage. As for if the marriage is consummated, then the matter is simple. The full mahar is due, full stop. We may also take from this that the husband is the one who stipulates and specifies the mahar. Because look at the wording, faradtum, what you have stipulated. And this makes sense because the wealth is being taken from the husband. And you cannot take anyone's wealth without their permission and contentment. We may take that the woman can give charity from her wealth without anyone's permission, because here she is allowed to give back what is owed to her. So this is basically giving a charity to the husband. And so she can do this with her wealth if she is of sound mind. She does not need the permission of any man. And we can take that the husband can be charitable to the wife by giving her the full mahar, even though he is only obligated to give her half the mahar. We may also take that the nikah is a contract, an aqd, because look at the word uqdatun nikah is used, and as such must be respected just like all other contracts. Not only that, but we learn that being generous to each other is better and closer to taqwa. So it shows us that not all actions are equal. Some actions are closer to taqwa than others. And we also learn that Allah is watching everything we do. So in this there is a threat and also an encouragement, as we mentioned before. Ayah 238. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. حافظوا meaning to preserve or to safeguard. It's an order form. على الصلوات, safeguard your salawat, plural of salah. Salah in the linguistic sense means dua, but in the technical Shar'i sense, as used in this ayah, it means an act of devotion to Allah Jalla wa Ala, using specific words and actions, which is initiated with the takbir and closed with the taslim. And he gives special mention to the as-salat al-wusta, the middle prayer. From the ahadith, we find the middle prayer is the salat al-asr. And yet again, evidence that the Quran is not enough for our guidance. We need the ahadith. وَقُومُوا, order format, stand, lillahi, for Allah, qanitin, which means with khushu', when you are tranquil and focused. So your mind and your body is focused on the salah. So you're not fidgeting, for example, and your mind is not wandering off thinking about other matters. Ayah number 239. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَمَا عَلَّمَكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. So he says, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, if you fear, meaning to say you fear the enemy in a battle context, then you may pray رِجَالًا, meaning walking or on foot, أو رُكْبَانًا, or riding, meaning riding a horse or a camel, and so on. Now, this fear that we are speaking about is normally going to be in a battle context where you're fearing the enemy, but it could be any fear, maybe some sort of natural disaster, for example. Now notice rijalan is mansub bil fatha because it is a hal. Where's the verb? It's meant to be fasallu, then pray, rijalan, on foot. But the verb fasallu, then pray, is mahdhuf. It is not mentioned because it is implied. Then he says, when you are safe, fadhkurullaha, then remember Allah, kama allamakum, as He has taught you. مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ, which you beforehand did not know. Now the dhikr of Allah here refers to the salah because the context is about the salah. And of course the salah is from the dhikr of Allah, even though the dhikr of Allah is broader than the salah. The word kama could mean as, so this would mean make mention of Allah just as He has taught you, meaning do not make mention of Him in any other way, because of course that would then be a bid'ah. Kama can also be a ta'leel, so a justification. So in other words, you will make mention of Allah. Why? Because He has taught you your deen and has bestowed this favor upon you. So why would you not thank Him by remembering Him? And both of these interpretations are acceptable. Okay, let's reflect on these two ayats. Well, firstly, we have to notice something a little off. The previous ayat were talking about the divorce. And the ayat following these two ayat are also going to talk about the divorce and marriage-related matters, like the iddah period. And yet we find these two ayat are speaking about the salah. So what has the salah got to do with divorce and iddah periods and so on? Well, there does not appear to be any link. And so we have to say that Allah knows best. The order of the ayat is tawqifiyah. Allah Jalla wa Ala, through the tongue of the Prophet, decides which ayah goes where, and it is not for us to meddle in that matter. We are just left saying Allahu A'lam. We also take from these ayat the order to guard our salawat, meaning pray them on time. If you do not perform them, then you are not guarding them, then you are losing them. That is the opposite of guarding them. We also take from this the special mention of the Salat al-Asr. Now, why would Salat al-Asr receive a special mention? It is the middle salah, and it happens during the time of day which is difficult for people to pray, because they're in the middle of their work. Notice when this Salat al-Asr happens, right in the middle of the afternoon. That is the most awkward time to take a break and pray. And because it is harder to pray Asr than the other Salah, it deserves a special mentioning. We note that he says, Qumu, stand. So we take from this that it is obligatory to stand in the Salah and not pray sitting down. And this is for the Fard Salawat. We also notice Lillahi, this means for Allah, so that when you perform your Salah, you have to have the Ikhlas. And of course the same goes for all acts of ibadah. From the word qanitin, we take the manner in which you perform the salah, with complete obedience and khushu'. We learn that the sharia is flexible. So in times of fear, you pray whether you're walking or running, or even if you're riding, let's say riding an animal, or even let's say riding a car or an aeroplane or some other vehicle. But notice that even during a fear, the salah is not waived. Think about that. Think about how vital the salah is if Allah Jalla wa Ala, as flexible as He is with His sharia, does not excuse from us the salah. That ought to tell you something about the centrality of the salah in the life of the Muslim, and that those people who call themselves Muslims and are not performing the salah have something fundamentally wrong with their iman. We can also take that if you're allowed to pray whilst walking or running during times of fear, then many actions which are not part of the salah are permissible in a case of necessity. We take from this ayah that the salah can be called a dhikr of Allah. We also take from this ayah that man is ignorant about matters of guidance, and that the only way to know about guidance is through the knowledge of Allah. Wallahu a'lam.